I am Charles Mayu. Today we'll be discussing revisions. Which one is it? Best practices for SOLIDWORKS Electrical Schematic revisions with a little bit of PDM integration at the end of it. Real quick rundown about me. I am an avid bowler, woodworker. I've been with Hawkridge for about 11 years. Prior to that, I was about 10 years a mechanical designer. I am located in Reno, Nevada, where it is a balmy 40 degrees outside today. So we're getting close to winter weather for us. I've got a really tight schedule today. So unfortunately, I won't be able to take any questions. I do have a full 20 minutes of content to get through. So you will hear me talk a little fast probably, because I do need to get through that information, right? So we're going to talk about revisions, book and drawing revisions, the attributes for the title block, the snapshots that go with revisions. And then we'll touch on that PDM integration. There's two really integrations there. There's the legacy integration, and then there's the PDM add-in, which was released in 2018 to current release. Okay, so really quick, jump right into it. It's going to be revisions, right? So setting the revision format, numeric or alpha or custom, what drawing revisions are, what book revisions are, the attributes for the title blocks, what you can pull, and then snapshots. Okay, so we'll kind of get into that. So first off, revisions, setting that revision format. Just keep in mind that revisions are set via a counter in the database. So every drawing and book has a counter for the revisions, which starts out at 0 and works its way up, right? So what you can do is basically take that counter, either have it display as 1, 2, 3, 4 numeric. Inside the formula, there is a setup for alpha, and then you can also do a switch command, which would allow you to do numeric and alpha. So you can start out with like 0, 1, 2, and then switch to A, B, C, D if you wanted to. Just keep in mind that it is a strict counter, and you have to make that switch manual, right? Unlike our PDM counterparts that can do it automatically for us. Okay, so let's take a look at drawing revisions. All right, to set a revision for a drawing, you simply right-click on that drawing. The contextual menu will pop up, and then the revisions. And then you'll get the revision manager for that drawing. One thing to keep in mind is that the revisions primarily are just like a timestamp. So it's as if you printed it out and you stamped it saying, okay, this is the revision at this point in time. That's all they are. There's no way to go back to a previous revision in a drawing. Let's say that. I'm going to use that term, in a drawing, okay? But you can do a validate and verify, which allows other users to come in here, check your chart, basically be their checker and approver in essence, right? So the validate would be the checker, the verifier would be the approver, and that would timestamp it with their username and the date that they did that. Now, you also do have 20 user data fields and 20 translatable data fields, along with the description that you can add in additional information that you want to display with that revision. Okay, so that is available, and you can add those by clicking that customize button right there in the bottom of the revision manager. All right, now one thing to keep in mind is that when you're adding revisions for book, or for drawings, I should say, is that the drawing cannot be higher than the book. All right, so that's just keep in mind that if your book is at Rev 0, your drawing can't go higher than Rev 0. Okay, so you can't add a new revision. If you want to add your drawing to go to Rev 1, then you have to take book to Rev 1 first. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, book revisions, same as drawing revisions. We're going to right click on that book, go into revisions. It's going to bring up the exact same revision manager here. And this one, you can see in the screenshot, I had hit the validate command. So it did put my information in there for validating and the date it was validated on. Okay, so just keep that in mind that it does do that automatically for you when you do click on it. And the name and initial that it puts in there is pulled from the attribute or from the application settings. That first page under collaboration settings, there's an option down there at the bottom for name to display. You can either do initials or you can customize it with your first name initial or however you want, right? One thing about book revisions is that when you do click the the verify button, it will prompt you if you want to update all of the drawings within that book. Okay, so any of the drawings that are automatically generated, right? So reports, design rules, terminal strips, those types of drawings. Okay, you also get an option when you rev or validate or verify a drawing book is to push that rev information to all of the drawings inside of that book. So this is why I recommend to majority of our customers, in fact, I recommend to all of our customers, is to don't use drawing revisions, but use book revisions and always push to the drawings. So that way it will update all the documents. Everything's in line with the same revision. The other thing you got to think about is with the integration between everything inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical, right? As everything is touched or connected to the database, there's no real drawing in the background for that information, right? So if you think of a SOLIDWORKS Electrical document book as a multi-sheet SOLIDWORKS drawing, if you were to check that drawing into PDM and do revisions in that in PDM, you can't rev just page 1 of that drawing. Can't rev just page 10 of that drawing. You have to rev that whole drawing to the next revision. So if you think that same way with SOLIDWORKS Electrical, just keep that in mind, is that it's a multi-sheet drawing. Everything is connected. You may change something on page 1 that affects something on page 20, right? So it's going to have those effects across it. So that's why we recommend doing book revisions versus individual drawing revisions, okay? Now, one other thing that does come up with book revisions also is to prompt to print the book. Obviously, you can print it, export, book to PDF, or do nothing, or the options there. And then the last thing that pops up, and this is an option we'll get into in the snapshot manager, is to take a snapshot automatically or to prompt you to take a snapshot. One thing to keep in mind is snapshots are an archive of the project at that point in time that is stored inside of the project. Okay, so those would be what we'd call the revision incrementals, right? So as you say, okay, I'm revving this, I'm stamping it, this revision, take a snapshot so you have that state you can go back to in the future. Okay, so with that, we're going to take a look at our revisions that are for our attributes for title blocks. Okay, so one of the things to keep in mind for our title blocks, we can pull either the book or the drawing information, right? So you do have bun rev underscore, and you see the blue ones are on this screenshot are ones that are existing in my title block I took this from, right? So you have a book revision or you have drawing revision, the current revision, you got the -0, -1, -2, -3, which means it goes back in those revisions, right? So 0 is current revision, -1 would be the prior revision, -2 would be the one before that. So you can display that revision history on a drawing up to 4 revisions back. So you can have 5 total revisions displayed on the drawing at one time. All right. So with that, just like I said, the number is the revision back. Okay. Now snapshots, right? So I mentioned this earlier. Snapshot is just an archive of the project, say within the project, right? To get the snapshots, there's 2 ways to get to them. From the process tab of the command manager or ribbon bar is the take snapshot, right? Obviously we did the one with the revision, right? So it took care of that, but you can also take snapshot. And the manual snapshot allows you to, give it some extra information. Description, now you can say what it was when you took it. It automatically timestamps it. Now the names are automatically generated. It fills in the name of the project and then the timestamp that it happens, right? Down to the minute, right? So if you look at that one, the screenshot I took was on October 4th at 1:41 in the afternoon, right? So 13:41 or 1:41 in the afternoon. And you can see it does say the event type was manual. If it was the revision one, it would say automatic. That type of stuff is taken there. Now, once you take a snapshot, you'll want to know, well, how do I access these snapshots, right? How do I get to them? Well, it's the snapshot manager. And if you saw that, the snapshot manager was right next to it. On the command manager, there's the snapshot manager right next to it, right? So snapshot manager allows you to view the snapshots, allows you to restore them as a new project. So just keep that in mind, is that we can't really revert the existing project, being that it is a archive of the project. You have to restore that as a new project. So it will show up in your project manager as a new version of that project if you went back to that. So just keep that in mind. You'll have several of them done together, right? Event description will show you, it fills that in. If you notice, there's an option there to do when book revision is verified, to have it prompt you. And you can also tell it to, hey, after so many days, prompt me to take a snapshot, right? So you can say every 15 days, every 30 days, wherever it is that you're working on these projects. You can tell it to do it every day if you want to, right? So just keep that in mind. You can also delete existing snapshots. You can also go into the properties, which will allow you to edit the descriptions, that type of stuff of those existing snapshots. All right. So we're about halfway through. I got about 9 minutes left and we're into PDM integration. Like I said, I do have a lot of information to get through in this time. So we're going to take a look at the two integrations that we have available, which I call the legacy integration, which is the link to PDM configuration. And there's a new PDM integration that's an add-in for SOLIDWORKS Electrical and PDM Professional. Okay. So first one is the link to PDM configuration, right? So link to PDM. Before we can either use the check in, check out or the update files for PDM, we do have to set it up. And to get to that, there's the link to PDM configuration command from the tools menu of the command manager and or ribbon bar, whichever you want to call it. And that's going to give you some options for, basic just export folder or advanced export to PDM vault, right? Allows you to select your vault, allows you to set that stuff up, right? So before we get into that, right? So you got the electrical vault, which is the vault name, which is the base folder for that. It's grayed out because it's always going to go into the base of the folder. And then you've got the subfolder for electrical projects. So it puts all the projects in a same subfolder within your vault, right? So I've got mine called electrical. So under that, it puts electrical _ projects, okay? And then you've got a couple options that are going to show up here, right? So the first one is formula for project folder name, right? So the folder name project. I use project _ name because that's my unique identifier. So just keep that in mind. Actually, before we get that, now one thing is that always turned on is the archive, right? So it's always going to archive it. And then where is it going to place that archive? It's going to place it under the subfolder under the project name called archive, okay? And then your drawings. You got some options to do with your drawings, whether you want to export them or not. You can export them to DWG or DXF. And then you got some options of subfolder, obviously. So everything we're going to see here is going to have subfolder. The formula for the file name, I'm tripping up on my words there. All right, so it's just going to use the file order number to create that name. Now, be cautious. One thing you got to keep in mind is if your PDM has it locked down that you can't have duplicate file names, you're going to have to make sure that these formulas are unique identifiers, right? So whether it's project name _ file order or whatever it might be, but you can create the formula to make sure it's unique names. And then you also got which version of DWG or DXF there, right? And then you've got 3D. Now, one thing I tell people with the 3D is typically if you are doing SOLIDWORKS Electrical 3D and you are using PDM, your assemblies are not going to be inside of the project. They're already going to be inside the vault. So we tell most people to turn this off. The files already exist there. They stayed in the vault. They're revision managed by the vault. Don't need to export them again. Once again, to help prevent duplicate file names and such like that, right? All right, so we got a couple more options. One of them is PDF, right? To export to PDF. Do I want hyperlinks? Do I want one book per file? And then the subfolder to put it under, right? So it's going to put that stuff in there for us. And then you got reports. Do I want to export my reports? Which file format do I want them in? Do I want them Excel, XLSX, comma delimited file, or just text? What subfolder to put them under? Mine's got it listed as BOM. And then do I want to export every report that's in the project already? Or do I want to specify a specific report to use, right? So I can come down here in the bottom ones. If you look at the green or the red ones, those are application specific reports that I need to do. So I can select an existing report that may not be part of my project and have it exported still. So just keep that in mind. You can do that also. All right. And then this last one, which is this bill of materials one, which is a specific report written specifically for integration into a third-party app from PDM, right? So ERPs, PLMs, that type of stuff, right? So these reports, there is no editor for them. So you do have to know what you're doing. It is an XML file that you have to edit and do that type of stuff. So typically what I do for customers is I'll write it inside of the report manager, copy that XML out, put it in this specific bill of materials or the EBOM, what it was called, EPDM BOM folder on the application side, and it will create these for us. So you can select a specific report to do. And then there's even a command line to run. So if you do have integration and you can run it via command line, you can run that via the command line to say, hey, take this file and then process it, okay? All right, now what you get either way is two options, right? So there is one, either update files for PDM or check in, check out, right? So the update files for PDM basically takes everything that you set up, exports all those drawings, exports the PDF, creates an archive, and saves all those files into the PDM vault, right? So that's what you get. One thing I wanted to point out here is if the project folder name, right? So whatever you set as the folder name for the project is unique or generates a unique ID, it will version control every time you hit this update files for PDM, right? So it will check in those files, we'll create those versions, so you do get those incremental changes if you want on that. Now there's another option here, which is the check in, check out option, right? It's controlled workflow is kind of what SOLIDWORKS calls it. In the project manager, you get a check in, check out button is what you get, okay? In essence, it does the exact same thing as the update files for PDM. The only difference is if you check it in, it does prompt you and asks if you are done working on the project or if you continue to work on. If you say I'm in progress or I'm continuing to work on this, it just checks in the files, leaves the project in the project manager. If you click done, it will delete the project from the project manager after it's done all of its export. So that way people can't make changes to it. It checks it in, puts it in the vault and puts that stuff. Now, the other thing that it does add also is it creates this PDM status column here. So you can see checked in and checked out information. It does follow the standard PDM check in, check out process, right? So the person that checked it out has to check it in. So just keep that in mind. If you're in a collaborative environment, whoever checks out that project and archives it to the project manager, they have to check it back in, okay? Same thing. Now, understanding what you get out of both of these, right? I said the result is the same for either one of them. It's just a matter of whether you get the controlled check in, check out, or whether you're just updating files in PDM. So here's an example of the file structure. I'm going to kind of jump through this because we got a few minutes left and I got a lot to go through here. So you got the schematic, you got the archives, you got the bill of materials, right? BOMs, you got the drawings, you've got the CSV file from the EPDM BOM, and then there's the PDF also, right? So all that shows up under those subfolders. Okay. Now see if I can get this in the last 3 minutes. Our PDM integration with the new one that came out was first released in 2018 SP0. It is an add-in for SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional and SOLIDWORKS Electrical. Okay. What it does, it adds a tab to the Command Manager ribbon bar inside of SOLIDWORKS that gives you the additional options there for check in, check out, get latest version, get version, show data card, change status, synchronize library, and you can change vaults. So if you have multiple vaults, you can work on it that way. Before you do anything inside of SOLIDWORKS Electrical though, you do have to configure it, and the configuration is done through the PDM administration, okay? So you, inside of PDM administration, so your PDM admin has to install the app or the add-in. They have to integrate it or run the integration administration, which brings up a couple options here. You've got general settings here, right? So always use the default root folder if you want, or you can allow them to select where you want to place it. So if you don't want to always put the projects in this funneled down, canned electrical projects folder, you can use this one and it allows you to select where to save your projects, okay? The folder for your library. Now this one does a little bit different because we're going to get some extra information. And I'll get to that here in a second. You get just one option for exporting PDFs. Is it open one PDF per book? And then drawings. Do you want DXF or DWG? And which version you're going to export on that. All right, you get BOM settings. Now, this is one thing that happens with SOLIDWORKS, this new integration is it will generate a PDM bill of material. Okay, so it will get that. How do you group things? Is it by location, by component type, or is it one global? And then what objects to export, parts, cables, harnesses, that type of stuff. All right. And then the last one is the file structure. Now, this is where you're going to define the name of the project, how to name it. Is there a default root folder for these to always go into, right? How to name the BOM. If you notice, there's a purchase part and a purchase cable one there also. So we actually sync the library and it creates a virtual document inside of PDM so it can build up that bill of materials, okay? Because you may not necessarily have a 3D object for all your components that are inside of your electrical bill of material, right? And then you got options for drawing, TEW zip, and PDF, obviously. Now, one thing else is you can map your variables, right? So you can push information from your electrical project to the files that get generated for PDM, okay? Great option for creating those and filling out those data cards for you, right? Which is the great thing within PDM. All right. So first thing you got to do though is you got to sync your library, right? So it's got to build all those virtual parts so it can create that bill of material when you do that check-in. Key things to keep in mind with this is when you're syncing, you got to have a whittled down library. If you have more than 10,000 parts in your library, it will take forever and fail eventually. Okay. The other thing is you can narrow it down by stuff, right? So the initial sync will take some time. So just keep that in mind. It will take time. And then every time you happen, it will happen. And when you add new components to your library, you do get the prompt that, hey, when you check it in, these things aren't synced. So you'll want to sync before you check in every project just to be safe. Okay. And then this is what you get. So once you hit the check-in button, you get your TEW zip file. And you notice it does fill out the data card for you with the description, the name, all that type of stuff, right? I get the PDF there above it. I get the bill of material and I get the drawings. Okay. So if I take a look at my actual TEW zip file, which is the archive, and I go to the BOM tab of the preview down here for the PDM integration, I get a bill of materials. So you get that full bill of materials there, you get where used, you get all that information pops up available there for you, right? Drawings, DWGs, they get exported also. So that information gets put in there where it's at and information gets filled in for you. All right. And then there is under BOMs, there is the virtual document bill of material there also. So you can see that information is set there also. All right, with that, I am over by 1 minute. So that was a lot of information for you guys. If you guys didn't see it already, down on the bottom of the session details, there is a copy of this PowerPoint available there for you guys. And once again, thank you